firstly, I want to apologize for delaying this review a bit. I've been busy getting a few personal issues out of the way and having my fun with Batman Arkham City, which is turning out to be a fantastic game by the way, but that's for another time. With that said, we've reached the end of the NES trilogy of Castlevania games, so without further ado, here's my review of Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse.
So from what I can guess, not a lot of people back in the day appreciated the change in gameplay Simon's Quest introduced us to. But the last Castlevania on the NES, Konami went back to the original formula that made the first game a success and expand upon it. The end result is Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse, a prequel to the first game that stars Trevor Belmont, an ancestor to Simon Belmont. In Japan he's known as Ralph. I never understood why they changed his name overseas. I mean, was Ralph not considered manly during localization or something? I don't know. The plot's simple. Kill Dracula. Well, the opening text elaborates a little further with the plot, but it sounds like it was written by a 6-year-old.
During 15th century Europe, there lived a person named Dracula. He practiced sorcery in order to create a bad world filled with evil. He began taking over the continent of Europe, changing countries from good to bad. The good people of Europe tried to fight off Dracula, but no one was able to survive. Finally, the Belmont family was summoned to battle Dracula's vile forces. The Belmont family has a long history of fighting evil. The townspeople became afraid of the Belmont's superhuman power and asked them to leave the country. Fortunately, the people found a mighty Belmont called Trevor. Wait, they banished the Belmonts because of their power, yet relied on the Belmonts to deal with their problem? Who translated this?
Castlevania 3 is pretty much the first game on steroids. More stages, more enemies, and more frustration. Trevor controls exactly like Simon, so apparently the stiff controls are hereditary. The whip can once again be upgraded by collecting the proper power-ups from candles and whatnot, and all the sub-weapons and power-ups from the first game are back in full force. Ah, good old pot roast in a wall. It's good to know that every incarnation of Castlevania comes equipped with their own pot roast. Dracula can be quite random. Once again, you complete a stage by defeating a boss and collecting the red orb that drops from the sky. It's always satisfying to pick this thing up and listen to that musical track. But besides upping the ante on familiar elements, Castlevania 3 introduces us to a few new things. Upon completing certain levels, you're given a choice. Do you take the upper path towards the clock tower, or the lower path through the forest?
The choices are yours, and yours alone.
With different paths come different stages and different encounters. The main gimmick of Castlevania 3 is the partner system. By defeating certain bosses, Trevor can save one of 3 people who have a bone to pick with Dracula. With a partner by your side, you can switch characters with a simple push of the select button. First, we have Grant Dynasty? How do you pronounce that last name? Well, it doesn't really matter because Grant is awesome. Besides being fast and having the ability to crawl on walls and ceilings like a spider, he can also, get this, control his jumps in mid-air. So wait, if the developers are certainly capable of giving a character fluid control, then why the hell aren't they giving the Belmonts the proper treatment? The only problem I have with Grant is his attack range. It's pathetically short. In the Japanese version, Grant's default weapon is the throwing dagger, which is much more useful but just as weak. Next up we have Sipho Belnades. Again, I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce that last name, so forgive me if I botched it. Sipho, like Grant, has miserably short range with physical attacks, but she more than makes up for it with her magical attacks. Oh yeah, spoiler alert, Sipho is a woman. Anyway, Sipho comes equipped with her own sub-weapons, a fireball that has good range, an incredibly useful ice attack, and my personal favorite, electrical orbs that absolutely destroys bosses. When I'm bringing along Sipho, I always make sure I stock up on hearts to make my encounters with bosses all the easier. Finally, we have Alucard. Yes, that Alucard, making his first appearance in this title. Actually, Alucard is my least favorite character in this game. His main weapon is his quote-unquote balls of destruction that can be upgraded to shoot 3 at once, but the overall strength of the attack leaves a lot to be desired. Well, it makes short work of Death's second form, so I guess that helps. Alucard can also transform into a bat that consumes 1 heart per second. Personally, I think it's a neat ability, and comes in handy when you just want to bypass a frustrating section. But overall, Alucard won't get his badass upgrade until Symphony of the Night, so until then, blah. The partner system adds a ton of replayability to the game. The only problem is, you can only take one partner at a time. If you run into another character while already traveling with someone else, you're going to have to drop your current partner if you want to take the new one along with you. If you're feeling confident you can beat the game with just Trevor, it's certainly possible, but I always bring a buddy along. Unfortunately, like I mentioned earlier, since Castlevania 3 enhances the formula of the original game, that also means the difficulty has been ramped up to a ridiculous degree. This game is hard. Combined with the control issues from earlier and level designs that are just fucking infuriating, Castlevania 3 is a game that not only requires patience, but sheer willpower to avoid throwing your controller straight through your TV. Seriously, some of these levels are just fucking impossible, and if it isn't frustrating gimmicks like awkwardly placed enemies, it's the goddamn stairs! Yes, I know I'm beating a dead horse by mentioning how much I absolutely loathe stairs in the old school games, but it's this game where they're the most frustrating. Some levels are filled to the brink with stairs, and combined with enemies that just piss you off, it's aggravating. Incredibly aggravating. What the? That enemy just took a third of my health with one hit! One hit! Why do enemies do more damage in later stages? What's the logic in that? I died about 90 times while recording footage for this review. Yeah, I used the famous help me code which gives me 10 lives instead of 3, but honestly, you need this code! Like the first game, you have unlimited continues, but if you get a game over, you're bumped back to the beginning of the level you died in. The stages are quite stingy with checkpoints, and when you lose a life, you're usually sent about 3 rooms back, which eventually causes your frustration levels to explode. This is especially apparent in the final stage. If you die during the fight with Dracula, you're bumped a few rooms back instead of restarting at the bottom of the grand staircase, like the first game. And if you get a game over, you have to do the entire stage all over again. Jesus Christ! Once again, the boss fights are the highlight, more than the first and second game combined actually. Most of them are quite easy to beat when you get a strategy down, but there are some where you just have to abuse the enemy programming, like the fight with the doppelganger. Oh, you son of a bitch! Dracula himself is certainly more involved this time around. Again, like the first game, he loves to teleport spam, but he's much easier to hit this time around. His second form this time around is a group of heads? What the hell is this supposed to be? It looks like a demonic execute. Oh, look at that, a Pokemon reference in a Castlevania game. The second form is incredibly easy though, and in a short time you'll beat the thing no problem. Well, that wasn't so— whoa, what the hell? Oh, well, turns out Dracula has a third form this time around, this giant man-bird that shoots lasers. Okay, I'm convinced the developers were running out of time and decided to let the child who wrote the opening design the final boss, so yeah, giant man-bird. Not really that hard, but the lasers can catch you off guard with their sheer size. With proper timing and skill, the third and final form of Dracula anticlimactically fades to black, therefore ending Castlevania 3. Your ending depends on which character you brought along, but regardless of such, you're always standing on a cliffside watching the castle crumble. Now you may be thinking, what's the significance of reviewing the Japanese version? Well, plenty. Unfortunately, I have no way of legitimately recording footage of it since I don't have a Famicom or converter. I've heard from plenty of you guys that Gyromite has a converter so I can use to play Japanese games, but as of this review, I still don't have one. So we're gonna cheat a bit here and use an emulator. I have the original game, so I don't feel particularly guilty in this case. The Japanese version of Castlevania 3 has a lot of little differences from the NES counterpart that I think make it an overall better experience. First off, the difficulty is slightly more balanced. The amount of damage an enemy does depends on the enemy itself, instead of how far you are along the game. The help me code doesn't work, but in this version I really don't mind. The Dracula Battle is also a bit different. Dracula's first form seems to move a lot faster than the NES version, but just as easy. The lasers his third form shoots are also smaller and as a result easier to dodge, and unlike the NES version, when you die fighting Dracula, you restart at the bottom of the grand staircase, just like the original game. You still have to redo the entire stage if you get a game over though, so blah. But the biggest difference and the main reason why I think the Famicom version completely trumps the NES version is because, say it with me, the music. My god, Castlevania 3's soundtrack as a whole is freaking incredible, but on the Famicom it sounds even better. Apparently the Famicom version has some extra sound channels that allow the developers to enhance the music, and goddamn it definitely shows. I can't really describe it, but if you want to hear for yourself, check out xplod's2a03's channel. He has the complete Castlevania 3 soundtrack, both NES and Famicom. Listen for yourself and decide which version you think is better. Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse is a prime example of a sequel done right. Well, in most areas, but you get where I'm going at. The levels are bigger, the replayability is high thanks to the partner system and multiple pathways, and overall, it's quite a hefty adventure for a game on the NES. As you could have guessed, my biggest gripe is with the difficulty, and like my opinion on Mario 2 The Lost Levels, it's a factor that I think ultimately weakens the experience. This was a sequel made for fans of the original, but in the end, I think only fans of the original will actually enjoy it. Newcomers may be turned off by the challenge, but if you can persevere through it all, you might find some satisfaction. Personally, I think you're better off playing the Japanese version to start off. Anything to lessen the difficulty without resorting to a Game Genie is a-okay by me. With that said, I'll give Castlevania 3 Dracula's Curse on the NES a 6.5 out of 10, and I'll give the Famicom version a 7.5 out of 10. The last 8-bit Castlevania certainly goes out with a bang, but technology marches forward, and the next time we meet we're going to the Super Nintendo. Next up on Month of Castlevania is Super Castlevania 4.